If you're enjoying the stories of the past and the legends that shaped our world, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss a new episode from Echoes of Empire. In the early years of the Han Dynasty, when the empire was still young, and the wounds of the Qin collapse had not yet healed, the fate of China rested not in the hands of emperors, but in those who moved in shadows around the throne. It was a time of fragile stability, a time when the court still trembled from rebellion and frontier threats, a time when the new dynasty seemed forever one misstep away from falling back into the chaos of the warring states. Into this uncertainty stepped one of the most formidable political figures in Chinese history, Empress Dowager Lü, widow of the founding emperor Liu Bang. Yet her power did not operate alone. Surrounding her was an intricate network of hidden actors, shadow regents whose actions shaped the politics of the court and defined the fate of the dynasty. Their names were rarely recorded in the official histories, erased by later rulers, dismissed by Confucian chroniclers, or overshadowed by the notoriety of the Liu clan. But for a brief span of years, these obscure figures controlled the machinery of the Han state, directing the emperor, ministers and armies alike. Their story, buried beneath layers of later revision, reveals a world where the boundaries between loyalty, fear, and ambition were blurred, and where survival demanded both subtlety and ruthlessness. To understand these shadow regents, one must begin with the world they inherited. When Liu Bang rose from peasant origins to found the Han dynasty, he created a fragile new order that mixed traditional aristocracy with newly elevated commoner officials. The court of the early Han was a battleground of factions. Generals who had fought alongside Liu Bang believed they deserved permanent power. Scholars and administrators hoped to rebuild stable governance after the brutality of the Qin. Regional kings, many of whom were Liu Bang's own relatives, carved out semi-independent realms. Against this volatile backdrop stood Empress Lü, whose own clan had been elevated rapidly as the empire took shape. Her marriage tied her fate to Liu Bang, but her ambitions extended far beyond the role of imperial consort. She had witnessed firsthand how power could be seized, reshaped, or destroyed through cunning and alliances. When Liu Bang died in 195 BCE, she moved into a position of immense influence as Empress Dowager to the young Emperor Hui, her son. Emperor Hui, gentle and ill-suited to rule, lacked the assertiveness of his father. Many in the court saw in him a ruler whose reign would be controlled by others. Empress Dowager Lü recognized this vulnerability and used it to her advantage. Yet the apparatus of control she built could not rest solely upon her authority. She required loyalists, informants, enforcers, and intermediaries who could extend her will throughout the vast structure of the imperial government. These individuals, drawn from her clan, from former court servants, from minor officials overlooked by rivals, formed the web of shadow regents, whose influence allowed her to dominate the court. Among the most important of these hidden figures were the Liu clan nobles. While the histories condemn the Liu clan broadly, many specific actors within it remain obscure. Liu Zhe, Liu Chan, and Liu Lu are mentioned in passing as beneficiaries of the Empress Dowager's rise, but the records reveal little of their actual actions. Yet it is clear they operated as her political hands, controlling military commands, supervising palace security, and overseeing the appointment of officials. They served not only as protectors, but also as instruments of intimidation. When Empress Dowager Lü needed to enforce obedience, they executed her will with quiet efficiency. Yet even within the Liu clan, many lesser names have been lost. Distant cousins elevated to marquisates, maternal relatives granted command over border garrisons, and trusted aides placed within the palace guard. These individuals performed the silent labor of controlling access to the emperor, monitoring dissent, and ensuring that rivals could not gain momentum. To maintain her grip on power, Empress Dowager Lü also cultivated a network of officials who owed their positions directly to her. Some were educated scholars, others practical administrators, but all benefited from her patronage. They operated in ministries, such as justice, finance, and agriculture. Their authority over taxation, law enforcement, and the appointment of local officials made them essential tools in maintaining order and suppressing dissent. The official histories present the Lü clan regency as a time of tyranny, yet records from regional commanderies show continuity and stability in governance, evidence that many of her appointed officials worked diligently to preserve the functioning of the state. These bureaucrats formed the administrative backbone of her rule, enabling her to control not just the palace but the entire empire. One of the most intriguing groups working behind the dowager's authority was the military commanders she strategically elevated. These were not the great generals celebrated in the histories, but mid-level officers promoted rapidly due to their loyalty. Their units guarded key passes, palace gates, and supply routes into the capital. Their identity is sometimes hinted at through archaeological finds, inscriptions on bronze weapons, boundary markers, recording assignments, or funerary texts, referencing obscure titles such as Commander of the Northern Barracks or Overseer of the Gabriel Gate Battalion. These officers ensured that no rival general could march on the capital. Their loyalty was absolute, secured by promises of wealth and the threat of annihilation. Together, these groups created a multi-layered structure of power. The Empress Dowager sat at its apex, but the shadow regents carried out its daily operations. Their activities emerge most clearly during the political crises that punctuated her regency. The first major test came with the downfall of concubine Qi and her son, Prince Rui. Concubine Qi had been Liu Bang's favored consort, and her son posed a threat to Empress Lu's position. The histories record that the Empress Dowager eliminated them brutally, but they do not detail how. The actual operation required coordination. Guards loyal to her infiltrated the palace quarters of Prince Rui, officials manipulated the legal proceedings against his mother, and eunuchs barred their allies from gaining access to the inner court. It was a meticulously planned effort, not a spontaneous act, and it revealed the sophistication of her network. Another moment where the shadow regents proved essential was during the illness and death of Emperor Hui. As his health declined, Empress Dowager Lü relied increasingly on her hidden advisors to tighten control. They managed the day-to-day governance, screened petitions, and ensured that no rival noble faction could take advantage of the emperor's weakness. When Hui died young, leaving no strong heir, Empress Dowager Lü installed a succession of puppet emperors, children she could manipulate. The shadow regents facilitated these transitions, orchestrating the removal of potential rivals, forging documents that justified appointments, and intimidating officials who might oppose her decisions. Perhaps the most dramatic demonstration of their influence came when the Empress Dowager elevated members of the Lü clan to kingships, a privilege previously reserved for the Lü imperial line. This act shocked the court and threatened the foundational legitimacy of the Han. Yet it was executed with remarkable precision. Shadow regents coordinated mass ceremonies, distributed titles, and deployed military units to enforce compliance in the regions where Lü clan kings were installed. The smoothness of the process indicates a deep infiltration of the bureaucracy by her loyalists. Though the histories cast this moment as a blatant usurpation, on the ground, it was carried out efficiently, revealing the competence of her hidden governance system. However, the very success of this network sowed the seeds of its fall. As the Lü clan grew in power, resentment built among the Lü princes and their allies. These rivals, long marginalized during Empress Lu's dominance, began quietly forming their own alliances. When Empress Dowager Lü died in 180 BCE, the empire entered a critical moment. Without her leadership, the shadow regents lacked cohesion. Some attempted to maintain control, others hesitated, and a few defected. The Lü clan, led by Prince Lü Hing's supporters, struck swiftly. They purged the Lü clan and dismantled its entire network. This purge was devastating. Generals who had served the Empress Dowager found themselves executed or exiled. Palace eunuchs, who had acted as her spies, were dismissed or killed. Minor nobles who had been elevated during her rule lost their titles. Many of the shadow regents were erased from official records, their names omitted intentionally by compilers of the histories who sought to legitimize the restored Lü line. The silence surrounding them is not accidental. It reflects a systematic attempt to erase their influence from memory, yet their legacy cannot be fully extinguished. The stability they maintained during a vulnerable period, allowed the early Han Dynasty to survive long enough for later emperors to consolidate its foundations. The administrative reforms preserved under their watch enabled the flourishing of the empire under rulers like Emperor Wen and Emperor Jing. Even the military safeguards they built helped protect the capital during transitions of power. The shadow regents of Empress Dowager Lü shaped the trajectory of the dynasty in ways that later rulers could not openly acknowledge, but could not undo. Their story also reveals the complexities of power in ancient China. The early Han court was not governed solely by emperors or their immediate relatives. It was a dynamic ecosystem of officials, commanders, attendants, and clan members, all competing for influence. Empress Dowager Lü mastered this environment by building a coalition of actors whose loyalty she cultivated through patronage and fear. In doing so, she demonstrated that imperial authority depended as much on control of personnel and information as on hereditary legitimacy. Today, new archaeological discoveries continue to shed light on this hidden world. Excavated tombs of early Han officials reveal grave goods bearing seals and inscriptions that hint at their roles in the palace. Bamboo texts recovered from ancient sites describe administrative procedures that match the patterns of centralization evident during her regency. Together, these fragments allow us to reconstruct a more nuanced picture of the period, one that acknowledges the contributions of those erased from official chronicles. The shadow regents of Empress Dowager Lü were neither simple villains nor heroic guardians. They were survivors navigating a treacherous political landscape. They preserved the functioning of the state while advancing the power of the Lü clan. They engaged in acts of brutality yet upheld administrative continuity. Their lives existed in the space between loyalty and ambition, between service and self-preservation. Through their actions, they kept the Han Dynasty intact during one of its most perilous early chapters. Their story reminds us that the course of history is shaped not only by rulers, but by those who maneuver behind the throne. The early Han Dynasty survived because of a network of individuals whose contributions remain largely hidden. To bring them back into view is to illuminate a world where power flowed silently through corridors of influence, where decisions were made in whispered councils, and where the fate of an empire depended on the unseen hands that guided it. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, it really helps the channel, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss a new episode from Echoes of Empire.